Hi guys, Randy here with FL Outdoors. Today I'm just going to give you a complete overview of Bitzenburger jigs, some of the things that I've learned to do to modify them slightly, just to make them a little bit more efficient and work really well. First, I'll start by saying, like, the number one thing that I almost always do with a Bitzenburger clamp is I chop the front edge off. It's as simple as taking this, put it on a workbench, take a hacksaw, and just straight cut it off. But then I'll take a wire wheel or a grinder or something and clean all that up, and make sure you like open up the clamp and clean the edges and the burrs that might have gone on the inside, because you have to make sure no matter what at any time, whether there's glue or there's gouged up from scraping glue off or anything like that, you have to make sure that this is fully closed, you know, when there's no vane in it. So like if you go and you see there's a big gap at the bottom or something like that, you might have glue up at the top, something like that. So that definitely helps a lot. Another modification that I actually did to this particular clamp is, this is one that I designed just for 275 driver vanes. So when I put a vane in here and I put it all the way against, if you look real closely, I actually took a grinder and ground this down just a hair larger than our 275 driver vane. So if you know that you always fletch right here, what this does is, because the part that's pushing on the arrow is just a hair smaller than the vane itself, when the glue comes out the end of the base, it doesn't go directly onto the clamp. So this is going to allow you to just keep on fletching. You're not going to have to scrape your clamp all the time, because you're not going to get much glue on it because it goes out past it. So that's something that if you know that you set your vanes right there all the time, you're always going to use this jig on your setup, this actually works really well. I'll give you a close-up just to give you an idea exactly what that looks like. So another thing too is obviously setting it. You know, any adhesion issue that you could ever have with a Bitzenburger jig, if you're using our primer pen and our glue, the only reason that this would not stick has nothing to do with prep of the arrow or what you cleaned it with or anything like that. It's really pretty much irrelevant. The number one thing is having a complete seat against the arrow. So if you go and you take a vane, stick it in the clamp, and for this test you put the vane all the way flush against the edge. That's not how we fletch them, which I'll get to in a second, but put it all the way up against the edge. Put the clamp all the way against the magnet, put the base of the clamp down against the body of the jig itself, stick it against, and if you press it against, and if you can't get that clamp to rock, then it's basically telling you that that's as seated as it can be. If you adjust this offset, you know, and the clamp rocks, then it's not fully seated. So I just recommend that the best way that I found is I'll actually almost always be able to put this back adjustment right on center and take this one and leave it loose. This one's already snugged down, leave this one loose, and just keep moving this back and forth with your arrow in place until all of a sudden you find a spot where that clamp doesn't rock at all. Snug it down there, and that's always a really perfect starting point and more often than not, that's going to just stick right away. If it doesn't stick in 5 seconds, move the jig. Don't keep trying vanes if they're not sticking. You have to adjust this part of the jig until you get it to fully stick. So if you did that rock and it's got no rock at all front to back of the clamp and it still didn't stick, you probably need to make a tiny adjustment either one way or the other. Very small, like 1/16 or less. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and fletch this one and show you exactly how I do it. You know, one of the things with the primer pen in all of our instructions is take this thing, put the tip side up, and just let the pressure out, because depending on the temperature or temperature changes, it could have pressurized. So if you do that and you push this and this pushes the door open, it makes all the primer come out. So first thing you do is basically detonate it, you know, to allow a little out. I flip this over, and generally about 2 presses will make it about as wet as it needs to be. You know, take your clamp, and your vane itself does not get pressed all the way in like we did earlier in that test. You need to leave a little bit of a gap between the edge of the clamp and the edge of the vane. So just make one swipe with a primer pen. You do not need to scrub or go back and forth. Even if you have to really just take your time and make sure that you get good coverage from end to end, that'll definitely help. Just one straight bead of glue. I'll give you another tip too, is if you start your glue about a 1/4 inch down, well, no, it's about an 1/8 inch down, it'll actually help to use some of that glue before it comes out the end of the base, rather than just, you know, have excess glue come out. So I hold that on for about 5 seconds at the most, pull the clamp off. I like to wipe it each time just to keep when the glue's still fresh, it'll allow you to wipe that off. All right, so with a Q-tip, this may sound simple, but if you take your glue, Q-tip and you start up at the far end, and as you work your way down, rotate the Q-tip until you make one complete revolution, and that way the glue wraps around the Q-tip and doesn't just get plowed down at the bottom. Because if you just wipe it straight down, that glue just builds up and then ends up being like down on the bottom of the vane, or you'll get it down on the base of the clamp, which is not really going to help either. So on to my next vane. Like I said, it's literally, if it doesn't stick in 5 seconds, move the jig before you do more vanes, because all you're going to do is burn through them. So same thing, just one swipe of the primer pen. I like to hold it on just a little bit of an angle to make sure I'm down in that entire trough, make sure it's loosening up that material enough to accept the glue. And same thing, I'm going to start and stop about an 1/8 inch from the end of each one. And same thing. So there are different theories on how people like to apply the clamp. You can apply the clamp however it works best for you. Sometimes it depends on exactly where you have the offset set. Now, if you have where it works, and if you want to stick the back of the vane on and roll it up to the front, that works perfectly fine. I personally find that I generally stick the clamp against the magnet, I square it up where the vane base is parallel, and I stick it straight on before I squeeze my pressure, and that seems to help, or seems to work well for me. So same thing, I'm going to wipe both ends of the Q-tip. I personally don't like to wipe the very ends. I leave that glue because it's almost like a tip and tail that we used to do for years. And so onto the last vane, same thing. I'm going to center it on my spot, leave a little bit of a gap, just one swipe of the primer pen. One straight bead of glue. There are definitely guys that like to put multiple dots and then smear it. If you do decide you want to do that, we recommend that you do not use the tip of the glue bottle, because the acetone that's in the primer will actually start to eat the plastic, and that actually doesn't work nearly as well, because then the plastic of the bottle is actually contaminating your glue bond. So if you find that you're shooting vanes off and you can't get them to stick perfectly and you're smearing the glue with a glue tip, get away from that. Maybe take a toothpick. A toothpick works okay to smear the glue if you really prefer to do it that way. I do find that it works best if you have just a little bit of excess glue comes out that requires you to wipe it off with a Q-tip, because then it's putting a little weld to the very outside edges of the bases on each one. So this was the third vane in this particular arrow, so I'm just going to wipe my third one off, and I can tell you right now that that is fully stuck on there. It's a perfect helical, and it will not come off already. At this point, it is on there for good. You could shoot that right through plywood and it's ready to rip. So I hope this is helpful for you. Visit floutdoors.com for more information. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We hope you like this video and stick around for more.